There exists within every human being a secret garden, overgrown with the weeds of accumulated hurt, neglect, and emotional wounds that have never been properly tended. Most people spend their entire lives walking past this garden, afraid to venture inside, convinced that nothing beautiful could possibly grow in such painful soil. But Carl Jung discovered something revolutionary. This garden of suffering is not your enemy. It's the very ground where authentic self-love takes root and flourishes. What if everything you've been told about healing is backwards? What if the path to loving yourself doesn't require you to become someone different, but rather to excavate who you've always been beneath the layers of protective armor you've built around your heart? Jung spent decades studying the human psyche, and his findings challenge everything our culture teaches us about emotional wellness and personal transformation. Research from Harvard Medical School reveals that unprocessed emotional pain literally rewires our neural pathways, creating automatic responses that keep us trapped in cycles of self-rejection. Dr. Gabor Mate's groundbreaking work on trauma shows that our childhood wounds don't simply fade with time. They become the invisible architects of our adult relationships, career choices, and most importantly, our relationship with ourselves. But here's what Jung understood that modern psychology is only now beginning to grasp. Your pain isn't a mistake that needs to be fixed. It's not a flaw in your design or evidence that you're broken. Your emotional wounds are actually compressed wisdom, waiting to be alchemized into the most profound form of self-acceptance you've ever experienced. The very experiences that made you feel unlovable are the raw materials from which unshakable self-love can emerge. Today we're going to explore how this transformation happens, not through positive thinking or self-help mantras, but through a fundamental shift in how you relate to the parts of yourself you've been trying to escape. This isn't about bypassing your pain or pretending it doesn't exist. This is about discovering the secret that Jung spent his lifetime uncovering, that within every wound lies a gift, and within every moment of suffering lies the seed of a more authentic way of loving yourself. The neuroscience of emotional alchemy. Your brain doesn't distinguish between physical and emotional pain. Dr. Naomi Eisenberger's research at UCLA demonstrates that social rejection and emotional wounds activate the same neural circuits as physical injury. When you experience emotional hurt, your anterior cingulate cortex, the brain's alarm system, fires with the same intensity as if you'd been physically harmed. This neurological reality explains why unhealed emotional wounds continue to influence your behavior decades after they occurred. Each time a situation reminds your nervous system of past hurt, you don't just remember the pain, you re-experience it as if it were happening for the first time. Your body floods with stress hormones, your breathing becomes shallow, and your mind generates thoughts designed to protect you from further injury. Jung called this phenomenon complexes, autonomous clusters of thoughts, emotions, and behaviors that can hijack your consciousness without your awareness. Modern neuroscience validates his insight. Traumatic experiences create what researchers call implicit memories, emotional and sensory imprints that influence your reactions without conscious access to the original event. But here's where Jung's understanding becomes revolutionary. While most therapeutic approaches focus on processing or healing these wounds, Jung discovered that transformation occurs not through elimination, but through integration. He found that when we stop fighting our emotional pain and begin relating to it with curiosity and compassion, something remarkable happens in the brain. Dr. Daniel Siegel's research on neuroplasticity shows that conscious attention to internal experience actually rewires neural networks. When you observe your emotional reactions without immediately trying to change or fix them, you strengthen the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for emotional regulation and self-awareness. Each moment of conscious presence with your pain builds new neural pathways that support resilience, self-compassion, and emotional intelligence. This is the biological foundation of what Jung called individuation, the process of becoming consciously whole. Your wounded parts don't need to be healed in the traditional sense. They need to be witnessed, understood, and integrated into a larger sense of self that can hold both pain and joy, vulnerability and strength, fear and love simultaneously. The shadow as your unlived self-love. Jung's concept of the shadow, the parts of ourselves we've rejected or hidden, reveals why traditional self-love practices often fail. Most people try to love themselves by emphasizing their positive qualities while avoiding or suppressing what they perceive as negative or unacceptable. But Jung discovered that this approach actually fragments the psyche, creating internal conflict and limiting authentic self-acceptance. Your shadow contains not only your perceived flaws and shortcomings, but also your unlived potential, your suppressed strengths, and the aspects of yourself that were deemed unacceptable by your early environment. The sensitive child who learned that emotions were weakness pushes their empathy into the shadow. The naturally assertive child who was punished for speaking up banishes their healthy boundaries to the unconscious. Dr. Brené Brown's research on shame and vulnerability supports Jung's insight. The aspects of ourselves we most reject often contain our greatest gifts. The person who judges others for being too emotional has usually disowned their own emotional intelligence. The individual who criticizes others for being selfish has typically rejected their own healthy self-advocacy. This internal rejection creates what Jung called projections, unconscious ways of seeing our own disowned qualities in other people. You don't just dislike certain traits in others, you're actually encountering the parts of yourself you've been trying to escape. Every judgment you make about someone else is actually information about what you've rejected within yourself. The path to authentic self-love requires shadow integration, the courageous process of reclaiming the parts of yourself you've learned to hide or deny. This doesn't mean acting out every impulse or expressing every emotion without consideration. It means developing a conscious relationship with all aspects of your psyche, understanding why certain parts were rejected, and finding healthy ways to honor the full spectrum of your humanity. When you begin to accept the parts of yourself you've been fighting, a profound shift occurs. The energy you've been using to maintain internal conflict becomes available for creativity, connection, and growth. The self-criticism that once felt necessary for motivation transforms into self-compassion that actually supports positive change. The hypervigilance that once protected you from rejection relaxes into a natural confidence that doesn't depend on others' approval. The alchemy of emotional integration. Jung understood that emotions are not random chemical reactions, but intelligent messengers carrying vital information about your inner world and your relationship to reality. When you've been conditioned to see certain emotions as negative or dangerous, you lose access to their wisdom and miss crucial guidance about your needs, boundaries, and authentic desires. Modern emotion research validates Jung's understanding. Dr. Lisa Feldman Barrett's work at Harvard shows that emotions are actually predictions your brain makes based on past experiences, not hardwired responses to current events. This means your emotional reactions are often more about your history than your present circumstances, but they contain valuable information about both. The anger you feel when someone dismisses your opinion isn't just about that moment. It's your psyche's way of signaling that your voice matters and deserves to be heard. The sadness that arises when a friendship ends isn't just about loss. It's your heart's recognition of how much connection means to you. The fear you experience before taking a risk isn't just anxiety. It's your nervous system's attempt to keep you safe while you navigate uncertainty. When you learn to listen to your emotions instead of immediately trying to change or suppress them, they become allies in your journey toward authentic self-love. Each feeling provides insight into your values, your needs, and the parts of your experience that require attention or care. Jung called this process holding the tension of opposites, the ability to contain contradictory emotions and experiences without immediately resolving the discomfort through action or avoidance. You can feel both excited and terrified about a new opportunity. You can love someone and also feel angry with them. You can be proud of your accomplishments while also recognizing areas for growth. This capacity to hold complexity is the foundation of emotional maturity and authentic self-love. Instead of trying to be consistent or perfect, you learn to embrace the full range of your human experience. Instead of judging yourself for having negative emotions, you recognize them as natural responses to life's challenges and opportunities. The integration of emotions also transforms your relationship with others. When you're no longer afraid of your own feelings, you become less reactive to other people's emotional states. When you can hold space for your own complexity, you naturally develop greater compassion for others' struggles and contradictions. When you trust your emotional wisdom, you make decisions that align with your authentic values rather than trying to meet external expectations. The Wounded Healer's Journey. One of Jung's most profound insights was the archetype of the wounded healer, the understanding that our greatest capacity to help others often emerges from our own experiences of pain and transformation. This concept revolutionizes how we understand the relationship between suffering and self-love. Traditional approaches to healing often position pain as something to overcome or transcend. But Jung recognized that our wounds, when consciously integrated, become sources of wisdom, compassion, and authentic strength. The person who has navigated depression develops profound empathy for others' struggles with mental health. The individual who has worked through childhood trauma gains unique insight into the healing process. The one who has faced their own darkness becomes capable of holding space for others' shadows without judgment. This doesn't mean glorifying suffering or believing that pain is necessary for growth. It means recognizing that the experiences that have hurt you most deeply also contain the seeds of your greatest gifts. Your sensitivity to rejection might reflect your exceptional capacity for connection. Your perfectionism might stem from a deep appreciation for excellence and beauty. Your tendency to overthink might indicate a sophisticated, analytical mind. Post-traumatic growth research by Dr. Richard Tedeschi shows that many people report positive changes following difficult experiences, including increased appreciation for life, deeper relationships, greater personal strength, and enhanced spiritual development. These changes don't happen automatically. They require conscious processing and integration of the traumatic experience. Jung's approach to the wounded healer involves transforming your relationship with your own pain from victim to meaning maker. Instead of seeing your wounds as evidence that life is cruel or that you're fundamentally flawed, you begin to understand them as part of a larger pattern of growth and transformation. Your struggles become teachers, your pain becomes wisdom, and your healing journey becomes a source of inspiration for others. This shift in perspective is the foundation of what Jung called self-love, not the narcissistic inflation of the ego, but a deep appreciation for the totality of your human experience. When you can hold both your wounds and your wisdom with equal tenderness, when you can see both your struggles and your strengths as essential parts of your story, you develop an unshakable sense of self-worth that doesn't depend on external circumstances or other people's opinions. The collective unconscious and universal healing. Jung's discovery of the collective unconscious reveals that your personal healing journey is connected to something much larger than your individual experience. The patterns of wounding and recovery, the archetypes of transformation, and the universal themes of human suffering and redemption are shared across cultures and throughout history. This understanding transforms the experience of emotional pain from a personal failing to a universal human experience. Your struggles with self-worth, your challenges in relationships, your fears about authenticity, these aren't unique flaws, but common threads in the human experience. Recognition of this shared humanity becomes a powerful foundation for self-compassion. Dr. Kristin Neff's research on self-compassion identifies three essential components: self-kindness, treating yourself with the same care you'd offer a good friend; common humanity, recognizing that suffering is part of the human experience; and mindfulness, observing your experience without getting overwhelmed by it. These elements align perfectly with Jung's understanding of healing through the collective unconscious. When you realize that your pain connects you to the broader human experience rather than separating you from it, shame begins to dissolve. When you understand that your healing journey contributes to the collective healing of humanity, your personal work takes on deeper meaning. When you recognize that the wisdom you gain from your struggles can serve others, your wounds transform from sources of suffering to sources of service. This collective dimension of healing also explains why authentic self-love naturally extends outward in service to others. As you develop genuine compassion for your own humanity, you spontaneously feel more empathy for others' struggles. As you learn to hold space for your own complexity, you become more accepting of others' contradictions. As you discover your own worth beneath your wounds, you begin to see the inherent value in everyone you encounter. Jung believed that individual healing contributes to the evolution of human consciousness. Every person who chooses awareness over unconsciousness, integration over fragmentation, love over fear, advances the collective journey toward greater wisdom and compassion. Your personal commitment to healing your relationship with yourself becomes an act of service to the larger human community. The practical path of inner alchemy. Understanding Jung's theories intellectually is only the beginning. The actual transformation of pain into self-love requires consistent practice and conscious engagement with your inner world. Jung developed a method called active imagination, a way of consciously dialoguing with unconscious contents that allows for healing and integration. This practice begins with cultivating what Jung called the observing self, the part of your consciousness that can witness your thoughts, emotions, and reactions without being completely identified with them. When you notice yourself triggered by someone's comment, instead of immediately defending or attacking, you can pause and observe. Something in me is activated right now. What is this reaction trying to tell me? Dr. Dan Siegel's research on mindsight, the ability to see the internal world of yourself and others, shows that this capacity for self-observation literally changes brain structure. People who regularly practice mindful awareness develop greater emotional regulation, improved relationships, and increased resilience to stress. The practice involves several key elements. First, noticing when you're being reactive rather than responsive. Reactivity feels automatic, urgent, and often disproportionate to the current situation. Responsiveness feels spacious, considered, and aligned with your values. When you catch yourself in reactivity, you can pause and ask, what wound is being touched here? What part of me needs attention? Second, developing curiosity about your emotional reactions rather than immediately trying to change them. Instead of judging yourself for feeling jealous, anxious, or angry, you can investigate, when did I first learn to feel this way? What is this emotion trying to protect or communicate? How can I honor this feeling while choosing a conscious response? Third, practicing what Jung called holding the tension, allowing difficult emotions to exist without immediately acting on them or pushing them away. This doesn't mean becoming passive or accepting harmful situations. It means creating space between stimulus and response, allowing your wisdom to inform your actions rather than your wounds. Fourth, engaging in regular dialogue with different parts of yourself. You might have conversations with your inner critic, your wounded child, your wise elder, or your creative self. This isn't fantasy or dissociation. It's a way of accessing the different aspects of your psyche that are usually unconscious. Finally, integrating insights from this inner work into your daily life through conscious choices that honor your authentic needs and values. As you understand your patterns more clearly, you can begin making different decisions, setting healthier boundaries, pursuing more meaningful goals, and relating to others from your integrated self rather than your wounded parts. The ripple effects of authentic self-love. When you begin relating to yourself with the kind of unconditional compassion that Jung's process cultivates, the effects extend far beyond your personal experience. Your nervous system becomes more regulated, which affects everyone around you. Your capacity for presence increases, which enhances the quality of all your relationships. Your authenticity gives others permission to be real, creating ripple effects of healing in your community. Research on emotional contagion shows that emotional states are literally transmitted between people through unconscious facial expressions, body language, and vocal tones. When you're operating from a place of self-acceptance rather than self-judgment, you unconsciously invite others into that same frequency of acceptance. Your relationships begin to shift in profound ways. People who were attracted to your wounded patterns, those who benefited from your people-pleasing, your self-doubt, or your emotional unavailability, may naturally drift away. This can feel uncomfortable at first, but it creates space for connections based on authentic appreciation rather than unconscious need. New relationships that form from this integrated place tend to be more honest, supportive, and mutually nourishing. You attract people who are also committed to growth and authenticity. Conflicts become opportunities for deeper understanding rather than threats to be avoided. Intimacy becomes possible because you're no longer hiding fundamental aspects of yourself. Your relationship with work and creative expression also transforms. When your sense of worth isn't dependent on achievement or external validation, you become free to pursue projects and goals that genuinely matter to you. Your creativity flows more freely because you're not constantly censoring yourself. Your leadership abilities emerge naturally because you're no longer afraid of your own power. The economic implications are significant as well. Dr. Amy Cuddy's research on presence shows that people who are comfortable with themselves tend to be more successful in negotiations, interviews, and leadership positions. When you're not constantly battling internal self-criticism, you have more mental and emotional energy available for problem-solving, innovation, and collaboration. Perhaps most importantly, your capacity for contribution increases. When you're no longer consumed with trying to earn love or prove your worth, you become available to serve causes and communities that matter to you. Your unique gifts, often hidden within your wounds, become resources for healing and transformation in the world. Jung believed that the ultimate purpose of individual psychological development is not personal happiness, but service to the larger evolution of human consciousness. As you transform your own relationship with suffering into wisdom and compassion, you contribute to the collective healing that our world desperately needs, the continuous spiral of growth. One of the most important aspects of Jung's understanding is that psychological development is not linear. You don't heal your wounds once and then move on to a problem-free life. Instead, you develop an increasingly sophisticated and compassionate relationship with the ongoing challenges of being human. Life will continue to present you with situations that trigger old wounds. The difference is that instead of being unconsciously reactive, you become consciously responsive. Instead of being victimized by your triggers, you recognize them as opportunities for deeper integration. Instead of judging yourself for having human reactions, you meet them with curiosity and care. This perspective is liberating because it removes the pressure to be perfect or fully healed. You don't have to wait until you've resolved all your issues to start living authentically or loving yourself unconditionally. You can begin exactly where you are, with whatever level of awareness and self-compassion you currently possess. Each spiral of growth brings new challenges and new opportunities for integration. The patterns you thought you had resolved may resurface in more subtle forms. The wounds you believed were healed may require deeper attention. This isn't regression, it's refinement. Each time you meet the same pattern with greater consciousness, you integrate it more fully. Jung called this lifelong process individuation, the ongoing journey of becoming who you truly are beneath the conditioning, defenses, and adaptations you develop to survive. It's not about becoming someone different, but about uncovering and expressing your authentic nature more fully. The self-love that emerges from this process is not dependent on circumstances, achievements, or other people's approval. It's a fundamental appreciation for your humanity, your struggles and your triumphs, your wounds and your wisdom, your darkness and your light. This kind of self-love becomes unshakable because it's based on truth rather than fantasy, on acceptance rather than performance. The call to wholeness. As we reach the end of this exploration, it's important to understand that Jung's invitation is not to a destination, but to a way of traveling. The path of transforming pain into self-love is not a problem to be solved, but a way of being to be cultivated. Every moment offers a new opportunity to choose consciousness over reactivity, integration over fragmentation, love over fear. Your wounds don't need to be completely healed before you can begin loving yourself. Your patterns don't need to be perfectly resolved before you can start living authentically. Your past doesn't need to be rewritten before you can embrace your present experience with compassion. The garden of your inner world, overgrown as it may be with the weeds of old pain and accumulated hurt, is not a problem to be fixed, but a landscape to be lovingly tended. Each wound you explore with curiosity, rather than judgment, becomes soil for new growth. Each pattern you meet with awareness rather than resistance becomes compost for transformation. Jung's legacy is not a set of techniques or strategies, but a fundamental shift in how we understand human suffering and potential. He showed us that we are not broken beings who need to be fixed, but whole beings who have temporarily forgotten our wholeness. He revealed that our capacity for love, especially self-love, is not limited by our circumstances, but by our willingness to embrace the full spectrum of our humanity. The love that emerges from this process of conscious integration is unlike any other. It's not the conditional approval you may have sought from others or tried to give yourself through achievement and performance. It's not the sentimental self-indulgence that masquerades as self-care in popular culture. This is the fierce, tender, unwavering love of a mother for her child, seeing clearly, accepting fully, and supporting unconditionally. This love transforms everything it touches. It heals relationships by removing the need for others to complete or validate you. It enhances creativity by eliminating the fear of authentic expression. It improves decision-making by aligning choices with values rather than insecurities. It increases resilience by providing an internal source of support that no external circumstance can shake. Your pain has been waiting not to be eliminated, but to be understood. Your wounds have been calling not for healing, but for integration. Your struggles have been asking not for resolution, but for meaning. In the mysterious alchemy of consciousness, your greatest sufferings can become your most profound gifts, not only to yourself, but to a world that desperately needs the wisdom that only comes through conscious integration of human experience. This is Jung's invitation to you, to step into the garden of your inner world, to tend lovingly to all that you find there, and to discover that the very soil that seemed so barren is actually rich with the potential for the most authentic and unshakable self-love you have ever imagined possible.